Welcome, everybody, to In Isolation With. It's the talk show where we make a connection without actually making contact. I hope you're all feeling well, and I thank you for stopping by. A little bit later, we'll meet Barry Avrich. He is a documentary filmmaker with 50 movies to his credit, including his new one. It's called Made You Look, a true story about fake art, and it details the biggest art fraud in modern history. It's a fascinating story, and we'll tell you all about that in just a couple of minutes. First up, though, I wanted to tell a quick little story about something that happened the other day. I love that during this pandemic, people are figuring out how to adapt to new normals. I was at a store the other day, lined up 6 feet increments from everyone else around me, and a couple of people down, I heard my name. I heard someone yell my name. Turns out it's my Facebook friend, Warren Davies, and he is renowned for his selfies and his self-photography. And he said, "Hey, Richard, do you mind if we take a socially distant selfie?" Well, I hadn't done that before, so of course I said yes, and this is the result. Thanks, Warren, for coming up with a new way of adapting to normal life during the pandemic. Now let's get to know Barry Avrich, director of Made You Look. I started off by asking him how he's holding up in these strange times.
If I watch the news cycle and I get caught up in the maelstrom of gloom and doom, then you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. So I my day is protecting my family, and at the same time trying to keep a routine and be creative, pitching, working, editing, writing, just living my life as best I can and hoping for the sun to come out. I mean, what else do we have on that end of it? So I'm staying creative. I'm not letting this thing suck me in.
And you're in Toronto. When you look out your window or if you go up to the grocery store or something, what are you noticing? Are you seeing people socially distancing? Are you seeing people following the rules? What do you think's going on out there?
Both. I mean, it's always going to be a mix. I think, Richard, it's nobody's touched on this yet. I think it's going to be demographically treated differently as things start to open. You've got the people that are 30 and under that are not going to give a damn, and they're just going to go back at it because they're invincible. And then anybody in their 60s and 70s and 80s are freaked out and might never go to a Black Sabbath concert again. So, I don't know. As far as people, I mean, I'm very discouraged with the people that are even playing by the rules because they're so freaked out. Like, so if I go to the grocery, which you have to go, and if I turn my cart down aisle 6, somebody's coming down the same aisle and they're like, "Meh!" And they're like freaked out and they cross the street. It's like, Jesus, let's just relax and be human beings here. But everybody's so panicked about any form of interaction, even if it's 6 feet away. It's like it's depressing going to buy groceries and a carton of milk because you're a pariah. And we have to live. And I smile at people when I'm in the grocery store. I say hello, and they're like disgusted and horrified. Like I have some kind of a plan to spit on them or lick them or something.
Yeah, an agenda. Well, I've been finding kind of the opposite of that, although a couple of things come to mind. So in line at the grocery store the other day, there's 6 feet between all of us, and the guy that was standing 6 feet behind me said kind of what you just said. He said, "I treat everyone like it's my ex coming down the street now." And I see them and I immediately run across the street. So there's that. But what I found is that this idea of socially distancing, I don't know that we really need to use the word social because it's not. It's just distancing. Except what I've been seeing, there's the thing from working from home. What I've been seeing, though, is that people on the street, around here anyway, are nodding. They're saying hello from a distance. So we are distancing over here anyway. At least we're doing it a little bit socially.
Well, you're in a better neighborhood, obviously. I tell you, you're not vertically challenged as I am. Being a short guy, I've never had so many people yell 6 feet at me constantly, and it's starting to get to me. 6 feet, 6 feet. It's like I'm not. Anyway, it's getting annoying, but I see happier days.
Is there something that you miss out of all of this?
Well, I miss the ability to escape. at will, you know, and whether I was making a film and shooting or whether I just needed 48 hours of solitude, which my family understands, having now lived with me for the longest they've ever lived with me. You know, they appreciated when I escaped. I can't, so I don't like not having freedom on my end. I mean, I try to do some of the routine, but I miss that. I miss, you know, we're in the middle of doing a documentary on Howie Mandel for Bell and Crave, and we've been doing the last round of interviews through Zoom, and I mean it's hilarious because, you know, the ultimate germaphobe, and here we are doing a documentary right in the middle of it. You can't ask for, you know, the serendipitous moment like this, but I miss, even though Howie is a germaphobe, we're not on top of each other filming, but I miss the moments we had and the nuances of interaction and interviewing as you do, which has been my whole life. It's hard. It's hard.
It's hard to do them remotely. It feels different. There's nothing like the connection of having someone face to face with you. Absolutely. But for now, what I'm saying about this show is that we're trying to make a connection with people without actually making contact with people. So that's what we're doing over here.
Well, and I love the setting that you're in. I love the lighting. It's like a Don Corleone office on that end of it, and you're about to make me an offer here, and I know I'm going to have to do something back, but I love it.
Well, that the offer comes later. Like the guy in your movie that tried to sell you Bob Dylan's harmonica. We'll get to that in a sec. The movie is called Made You Look: A True Story About Fake Art. And you've been working on this for a couple of years, and we'll talk about it in just a second, very specific ways. But here's the thing. You travel. Every time I see you, you've just gotten back from somewhere, whether it's Los Angeles, New York, whatever it is, you're always on the road. Do you think that the pandemic will be on your mind when all this is over? The next time you get on an airplane, you're on the big tube with people, or perhaps it's a movie theater. Do you think that this will have a hangover effect for you?
For me, no. Because I am a fatalist. I'm not going to be reckless. I probably will be the first guy on an airplane. I remember getting on a flight to New York 72 hours after, no, it wasn't 72 hours. It was probably 2 weeks, to be honest with you, after 9/11. Mm-hmm. And everybody was looking at everybody. Nobody wanted to be in a middle seat in case you had to get out. It was freaked out. Now, this is different. It's an infectious disease on that end of it. I'm going to be careful about it, but you know, would I prefer that there's nobody in the seat next to me? Perhaps, but you know, I'll be cautious. But a hangover effect, and that I'm going to completely change the way I live my life? No.
An $80 million scandal has the art world up in arms tonight.
A series of fakes that sold for tens of millions of dollars.
The gallery involved in the sale of over 30 fakes.
It takes more than a really talented con man to pull off a forgery of this magnitude.
All right, let's talk about the movie. So I've seen it. Congratulations. It's fantastic. This tells, and it feels like, for me, almost like a follow-up to Blurred Lines, a film that you made a few years ago, also set in the art world. It's a companion piece to that. But you spent 2 years working on this movie, and then just a month or so before it was supposed to play at the Hot Docs Canadian International Documentary Festival, this happens, and it changed everything. So you had to finish the film remotely, and then you had to make the decision whether or not to wait for a theatrical release, however long that would be, or go to streaming and to television. I don't know any filmmaker that doesn't want to see their movie on the big screen. So tell me how difficult that decision was for you. And then when you made the decision and had to finish the film quickly, how do you color correct a movie remotely?
Great questions. So once this happened and I saw the writing on the wall, and Hot Docs and CBC had come to me with this idea, I was torn. I mean, there's no question, Richard, you're 100% right. You want to get feedback from the audience. You want to be on that 60-foot or 80-foot screen. You want it to Q&A. I mean, you know, filmmakers love touring with their films because you get real feedback, real time, unlike, you know, watching at home and somebody sends you a text or an email. So it was hard. It was very, very hard for me. I consulted with a lot of people in Los Angeles in the industry to say, what do I do? And they counseled me on that end of it. And they all said, listen, the risk you run, you don't have James Bond here. The risk you run is that if you wait till the fall, there's going to be a queue of stuff. You're going to have more competition than you're ever going to have. So if you can negotiate and own your lane and come out big, and they did offer me first. I didn't negotiate for it. And I figured once I got my head as a marketing guy around the sense of, okay, I'm opening the film festival. I can live with that. And off we went. Viewership in television is up 200%. So once I said, all right, let's roll with it, then the marketing big guns come out and how to make sure that people really got a chance to see this. And I can't remember having this much feedback on a film in close to 50 documentaries. The feedback has been phenomenal, and that's just Canada. So, once the world opens, we'll look at an international release and figure it out, I hope. But I think the experiment for CBC and Hot Docs worked.
And for you, finishing the film, because there was work to be done, right? There was color correction and all that kind of thing. You're there, your technicians and editors and everywhere elsewhere. Do you have elaborate Zoom conversations with people while it's happening? How does it work?
Well, we had to accelerate we were already in post. We had a picture lock, which for your viewers is that we had a locked picture. We were happy with the direction of the film, but now you have to color correct it, make sure everybody looks as beautiful as you. The sound has to be incredible. The supers, the packaging, all that stuff has to happen. So we had to take 30 days and turn it into 10 days. Mm. And I had to find, the technicians that were prepared to work on it, either go into their facilities at midnight or work from home. And so, yes, it was very hard for me because, film, I'm very specific and detailed about sound and color. And so how do you mix a film in 5.1 digital sound, surround sound with a lot of music in it remotely and listen to it back home on a laptop? Painful. So I've been working with the same, audio engineer, sound engineer, Richard Spence Thomas, on all my films. He's a genius. And I basically said to him, look, Richard, I have to trust you, but I reserve the right to go back in after and remix if we have to. Same thing with the team at Creative Post who worked on the color on that. We will go back. There's stuff that, they did a phenomenal job in 10 days. It's ridiculous with, hours of footage and archival footage and all that stuff. Very hard. And they did a super job. But, we'll go back. We'll go back and fix and clean up. But we had to move so fast to get it to CBC early because they got to go through quality control. It was, as any network would, it was tough. Not the best situation, but, you got to release. I'm fortunate that I didn't have a production shut down. We kept going. So that was the good news.
Now, the film is about art forgery. How is it that someone like Glafira Rosales is able to fool the world's leading experts, or most of the world's leading experts, and do it for a decade? I mean, this is an incredible story, and it's partially about the scam itself, and it's partially about the effectiveness of experts, and what does it mean to be an expert in the art world if you can be fooled by a Jackson Pollock where the name is spelled incorrectly on the front of the canvas.
Well, I think what's interesting, it's not necessarily in the film, but everybody who walked into the Knoedler Gallery, where 90% of the scandal took place, the fakes, equated the Knoedler Gallery to Tiffany's. If you're going to buy your partner a diamond ring at Tiffany's, you trust the blue box. You don't ask for a mining certificate what mine the diamond came from in South Africa or Rhodesia. You trust them. So they believed in Ann Freedman, who ran the gallery. They believed the Knoedler Gallery, which had a 165-year pedigree. And also Ann Freedman, who ran the gallery, in her defense, she lined up the slew of these blue chip experts that said everything was real without necessarily forensically testing paintings, which is very expensive. Mm-hmm. So they just looked at it and said, yeah, it was real. And so everybody went for it. And they also were getting a deal here and there. I could sell you Jackson Pollock, for less than, okay, I'll take it. I mean, we're all savvy collectors who had art consultants as well, and not a group of people I love, because they art consultants who you hired to help find a painting, teach you to buy art with your ears instead of your eyes. They make money when they sell you the art and when they buy the art from whoever they're buying from. They double dip. So ultimately, I always say to people, you got to buy art because you love it. You love what's on the wall behind you, not because you're going to flip it in a year from now.
Yeah, it's like real estate. Buy a house that you love, because if you end up living in it, you don't want to have this albatross around your neck.
Well, here's the difference. So real estate appreciates in value. It's got to be some unbelievable situation where you bought a house and it's lost value. God knows who's moved in next
The
door.
roof blows off or something. Yeah.
Exactly. But art, it's a complete game of roulette. Artists are pumped and dumped by galleries all the time, so that some artists, a lot of them have held their value. 95% of them have not.
So Ann Freedman is central to this story. She worked at the Knoedler Gallery for over 3 decades. She was considered trustworthy. She was an expert. When she wasn't the final word, she would bring in experts to validate the worth of the paintings. Then it all goes sideways for her. She loses her job. For me, the film is neutral in its presentation of her. I was left wondering, is she greedy? Is she naive? Is she someone who just got caught up in a bad situation? And then the question that I had beyond all that is, how ever did you convince her to go on camera? Because this is reliving some of the worst professional and, I would imagine, personal moments of her life.
Well, yeah, I know. So, I mean, a long, great question. I think I have a good friend of mine who's an art collector named Jay Hennick. He brought me the story. I passed on it and initially and said, look, I just finished another art documentary, and I find that the world of art is so shadowy and mysterious, you can't get access. So I'm never going to get people to talk. And the first film, Blurred Lines, through connections and whatever, we had to beg people, Michael Ovitz, to beg him to go on camera. There's no upside for any billionaire to talk about what they bought or what they want to sold or how they sell it, or the galleries to talk about the obscene margins they're making. There isn't an industry in the world where there's a margin of buy it for 100,000, sell it for 17 million. It's insane on that end of it. So, Jay told me about the story, and I did some further research, and I said, if I can get Ann Freedman to go on camera, then that will be the debate for the film. Mm-hmm. Was Ann, should she have known? Did she not know? Is she guilty? Is she ignorant? Who knows? So I flew to New York. She agreed to meet with me. I met with her. What was supposed to be an hour was a 4-hour breakfast, and then 3 more lunches. And we developed a trust. And what I basically said to her, Richard, was, I gave her a bunch of my documentaries. I said, I let the audience decide. I am not Michael Moore. Right. I have no interest in dissecting and destroying your reputation any further than it is and pushing you into a grave. I will give you 90 minutes to tell your story, unlike any news bite. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to tell the world what you think happened to you. However, there's going to be people in the film that don't like you, that have an adverse opinion of you, and that's the way it's going to be. But I will let the audience decide. It will be, as you say, a neutral canvas. Up to you on that end of it. And she trusted me, and and off we went on this journey together. She hasn't seen it. She's nervous, on that end of it. What does this mean? She saw the trailer, and it looks one-sided. And I said, a trailer's there to design and tease and titillate. Let's not get panicked about that. She'll see the film eventually. She's not a partner. Has no creative control. But, as I read the commentary I'm getting from everybody just in Canada and even globally, people that can't see it yet, it's a huge debate. Should she have known? And I honestly believe, Richard, that, with a 32-year pedigree that she had, being respected, showing up at Art Basel in Switzerland and in the Armory shows in New York where the waves would part for her. She didn't go into this with an intent to deceive. She didn't sit down with Glafira Rosales and Jose Carlos Bergantinos Diaz, the criminal mastermind, the kooky guy in the film, to set up with a scheme. She should have known, a good way in that she had a problem with these people, but she kept lining up these experts, and there was just no turning back. And so you decide, okay, if I now admit that I'm wrong, I'm ruined. Right. And she waited to the last moment, as that moment in the film where, what kind of day were you having when you found out that the FBI had Glafira Rosales confess? not good.
I know. I mean, to hear her tell the story of her last moments in that office that she had for 30 plus years is kind of heartbreaking. On the other hand, though, and maybe it's the cynic in me, thinks, well, she made a lot of money. I mean, whatever she was making as her salary, plus she made about $10 million in commissions. I mean, it just seems like there could be, I won't say there is, but there could be a willful want for this to be real, because some of the deals just seem too good to be true. Some of them, it just felt to me like almost like a Ponzi scheme. If someone says to you, "I'll sell you this for $500," and then you can turn around and sell it for $10 million, that should raise flags.
Without a doubt. However, in the art world, and you've seen it, there are these people that go to a garage sale and discover a Rembrandt or a Van Gogh and bought it for $100, and it's now worth 10 or 60 or whatever it is. It does happen. The issue in the Knoedler case was that it was all coming from one source. Mm-hmm. So this couple, and aside from Patient Quinn, the artist, who was able to forge 60 of them and 10 different artists. Wow. So, I mean, Anne, everybody, she should have gone to jail. She should have gone to jail. I mean, she lost her reputation. She lost her net value on that end of it. And off you go. But it was tricky. As Jason Hernandez, the Southern District, former Southern District prosecutor said, district attorney said, we believe, he said to me off camera, he said, we believe in winning. And I couldn't guarantee that a jury would be able to convict Ann Freedman. So that was the end of that.
Well, she's convincing. She's likable. She's a salesperson. She sold it well in the interviews anyway that I saw. So is this movie a cautionary tale for anyone who's interested in buying high-end pieces of art?
100%. I think, it should be 101 watching, but if you're going to spend $10,000 to $10 million on that end of it, to understand, ask the gallery and look at the paperwork on where it came from. It's not enough that an expert saw it and liked it. Mm-hmm. Who owned it before? What's the trail of paperwork that went on? I'll tell you, the best provenance ever is to find the artist standing in front of the piece that you bought.
Yeah.
If you can have that, then fantastic. But it shouldn't dissuade people from buying art, whether it's a film poster or a lithograph. Buy it because you love it. You walk into your house every day and you should fall in love with the art on your wall. You wake up in the morning, you have art on your walls, you look at it, I see it right now, and everything has a story and tells you a little bit of escape for you. That's what it should be. Not about the fact, I got this piece, it's worth 10,000, I can hold on and I can flip it. You're never going to flip it. Hold on to it and just love it.
What is it about the art world that fascinates us then? Is it this sense of mystery and this sense of high stakes? I mean, we're talking millions of dollars here for the paintings in the film. It's not always the case.
80 million. Yeah, I mean, again, it's the only industry like this that's unregulated. There's no laws. So what's to protect you from coming in and creating a false story for a painting, or the fact that a gallery says, bought it for $2 million and then sells it to you for 17? It's crazy. I mean, even the auction houses, Richard, where you'll go in and this, what this, Jose Carlos Bergantinos used to do, he'd go to an auction house, he'd bring 5 friends on a piece that he was selling, and they'd bid it up.
Right.
Nothing illegal. Yep. Really? Why should there not, when you walk into an art gallery today, there's no prices available. You have to ask. And they won't even, if you go to some of the major galleries in the world, they won't even give them to you. If they don't know Richard Crouse, the collector, right, you need that consultant that gets you in and tries to say, you know what, Richard, this piece is perfect for your collection because it complements this. And then the next time you go to Switzerland to a big show or New York, they're going to let you have a look at the stuff before anybody else. It's a game of access. I think in my first film, Blurred Lines, somebody referred to it as a NetJet parking lot of people that are coming in, who can afford to buy. Keep in mind, in this story, of 60 paintings, only 10 people sued.
Right.
There's a whole list in the film of everybody who bought the paintings that didn't sue, including David Mervish here in Toronto, who bought pieces that didn't sue. They didn't want the headline.
Now, were you tempted at all to buy Bob Dylan's harmonica from the guy who you just called the criminal mastermind? I would have been tempted to have a look at it, but then you know the story more than him.
You would. Well, here is the inside story on the harmonica, is that the good news is I'm not a Bob Dylan fan. That's number one.
Right.
I don't even like a harmonica. I mean, if it's Stevie Wonder, okay. Other than that, nobody really knows how to play it that well. A couple of people. I can do without. I don't even like the sound. And then forget about the fact that it most likely wasn't real. But the backstory, we finished filming, and I let the cameras keep rolling as you do. And Carlos Bergantinos takes this velvet pouch out of his Prada jacket, by Kuna, gorgeous coat, and it says Christie's on the velvet pouch. And now I'm intrigued. And then there's a lot tag. So when you go to auction, there'll be a tag with a number on it that relates to the bidding and the lot that it is. And he says to me, this is Bob Dylan's harmonica. Maybe you'd like to buy it. And I said, not really. And my producer on the film says, wait a minute, I think I'd like that. And I went, are you out of your mind?
Have you not been paying attention?
It's a fake. And Carlos goes, it's not a fake. It's not a fake. I bought it from Christie's. It's not a fake. Look it up. So I said, how much do you want for it? And he says, you know what? I'm going to go for lunch. We come back, we make a price. So off he goes to lunch, and we're, putting the equipment back together and whatnot. And then I kept one camera going, and he comes back, and I looked it up online, and not that his was real, but there's been Bob Dylan harmonicas that have sold for $10,000. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what, $1,000. It's worth a G note for the story, because I would have had the thing tested for the spit in it.
Yeah, find the DNA. Yeah.
So he says, 1,000. These things are selling for 10,000. Like he knows. And I said, no, I'll give you 1,500. And that's it. No. And it goes back into his pocket. And that was the end of that.
Wow.
I'm not going to spend $10,000, nor was my producer on a harmonica.
One last question. It's a pandemic question. When all this is said and done, do you think it will have an effect on the kinds of films that are being made and the kinds of entertainment that we're going to get to see?
Well, for sure. I mean, I think you have to look at it a couple of different ways. Is it going to have an effect on how we look at film and how we watch it? Are we running back into the movie theaters? Are we going to, never go out again? Are we going to look at certain kinds of films? Look, I think everything, Richard, as I said at the top, will be demographically driven on that end of it. If you get used to something, then you get used to something. Are people going to want to get out of their houses? Yes. Do they want to sit on top of each other in movie theaters? No. I mean, it's going to take a while. I mean, I saw this interview the other day with Steve Wynn on Las Vegas, where they're completely reconfiguring the floors of the casinos to figure out how people are going to play craps and blackjack. It's going to be the same thing in the entertainment. It's going to have a huge effect. But at the end of the day, content is people need content. We're running out of stuff. So it'll come back. It's going to take a while. It'll change the way people interact with each other for a bit. But I've been reading up on the Black Plague and the Spanish flu and all those things that decimated, a third of the crazy stuff. And here we were before that, happened, and we were hugging and sitting on top of each other at concerts. So it will take a time. It's time. Hopefully, it won't be 18 generations till we get there, but it will take its time. But we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, me too. Barry, thanks so much for this. I appreciate it.
Richard, always. Thank you. You're the best.
Make this stuff up. It was incredible.
An absolutely bizarre story for any dealer to accept.
It's a business. These works went into the greatest museums in the world. But there was a point where questions were coming up.
That was director Barry Avrich talking about his film Made Ya Look, a true story about fake art. You can find it on CBC Gem, also on the Documentary Channel. Now, if you'll remember, about a week and a half ago, I told you about Tony Visconti, and I was envious of his face mask. He was David Bowie's producer, T-Rex's producer, the producer of so many records that I grew up loving, and he has the coolest face mask in the world. It's his David Bowie face mask. I coveted it. I wanted one. So I went online, couldn't find the exact same thing, but I found something better. A Toronto company called Peach Berserk, and you can find them at peachberserk.ca. Get in touch with them, ask for Kingy, and she will make you one of these beautiful things. Now, I showed you last week a photo of it. This is what it looks like in person. Now, this is the first time I've tried it on. It just came in the mail a couple of minutes ago. I know it sounds a little muffled, but you know what? I already feel a little safer wearing David Bowie on my face. Thanks, Kingy Carpenter. Thank you, peachberserk.ca. Get in touch with them if you'd like your very own David Bowie mask. In the meantime, stay safe. We'll talk to you again next time.